On March 14, 2187, Europa Research Station Alpha went silent. 47 scientists and engineers, gone without warning, no distress signal, no evacuation protocol, just silence. This is the reconstructed account of those final 72 hours, pieced together from security footage, recovered data logs, and the testimony of one survivor who has never spoken publicly about what happened beneath the ice. This is the story of Europa Station. And this is why humanity will never drill on Europa again. Dr. Sarah Chen had been stationed on Europa for 147 days when the deep drill reached a depth of 4,000 meters. The mission parameters were straightforward: penetrate the ice shelf, sample the subsurface ocean, catalog any microbial life, and return to Earth in 6 weeks. It was supposed to be routine. Europa Station had been operational for 3 years without incident. The ice shelf they were drilling through had been geologically stable for millions of years. Every survey, every model, every simulation said the same thing: solid ice all the way down to the ocean layer at 15 kilometers depth. At 0600 hours station time on March 1st, everything changed. Chen was reviewing protein analysis reports in the lab when the depth alarm triggered. She made her way to the observation deck, where engineer Thomas Rodriguez was already pulling up the drill telemetry. The numbers didn't make sense. The drill bit had broken through into a void, not the ocean. They were still 11 kilometers above the projected ocean depth. This was something else, a cavity, a pocket of empty space suspended in the ice. Chen leaned over Rodriguez's shoulder and studied the sensor data. The void measured approximately 200 meters across, roughly spherical. And the temperature readings were wrong. The cavity was warmer than the surrounding ice by 3.7 degrees Celsius. "Run the geological surveys again," Chen said. "Cross-reference with the orbital scans." Rodriguez worked in silence for several minutes. When he finally looked up, his expression was carefully neutral. "According to every model we have," he said, "this cavity shouldn't exist." Chen considered their options. They could retract the drill, seal the borehole, and report the anomaly to mission control. The safe choice, the cautious choice. Or they could investigate. The communication delay to Earth was 52 minutes round trip. By the time mission control could review the data and authorize a decision, they'd lose half a day. "Prep a camera probe," Chen ordered. "Full sensor suite. I want to know what's down there." It was the last good decision anyone would make on Europa Station. The probe descended at 1400 hours. 12 crew members crowded into the observation deck to watch the feed. Communications specialist Yuki Tanaka monitored the signal strength. Medical Officer David Park stood at the back, arms crossed, watching the screens. The probe's camera activated at 200 meters. At first, there was nothing but ice. The same layered, compressed formations they'd seen in every other borehole. At 847 meters, the probe broke through into the cavity. For several seconds, no one in the observation deck spoke. The cavity wasn't empty. There was a structure. It hung suspended in the center of the void, held in place by ice formations that looked almost deliberate, angular, geometric, clearly artificial. The structure itself defied easy description. It was roughly cylindrical, perhaps 40 meters long, with surfaces that seemed to shift in the probe's lights, not reflective exactly, more like the material was absorbing and re-emitting the light at a fractional delay. Chen felt her breath catch. In 15 years of planetary research, she had never seen anything like this. "Age estimate?" she asked. Rodriguez ran the analysis. When the results came back, he double-checked them before speaking. "Based on the ice formation patterns around it," he said quietly, "at least 2.3 million years old, possibly older." The observation deck had gone completely silent. Yuki broke the quiet. "There's movement. Lower right quadrant." Chen's eyes snapped to the indicated section of the feed. At first, she saw nothing. Then, there, something shifted in the darkness beyond the structure. Something that didn't match the static ice formations. "Can we get a closer look?" Chen asked. Rodriguez adjusted the probe's position. The camera zoomed in. For exactly 23 seconds, the feed showed nothing but white noise. When the image returned, everything had changed. The probe's camera angle was different, as if something had physically turned the probe around. Now it was pointed upward, away from the structure. Toward the borehole. Toward the station. Chen felt ice settle into her stomach. "Thomas," she said carefully, "pull it back up, right now." Rodriguez was already moving, his fingers flying across the controls. Then his hands stopped. "The tether's going slack," he said. "What do you mean slack? We're reeling it in." "I know, but something down there." He looked up at Chen. "Something's sending the probe back up on its own. It's ascending faster than our winch speed." On the screen, the probe's upward-facing camera showed the borehole shrinking above it, growing closer. Chen grabbed a radio. "All stations, this is Chen. Initiate quarantine protocol for Drill Bay 7. No one goes near that borehole until we know what we're dealing with. Acknowledge." The responses came in one by one. 16 crew members acknowledged the order. 31 didn't respond. They were off shift, sleeping, or working in other sections of the station. The probe would reach the surface in 6 hours. Chen had no way of knowing that 6 hours was already too late. The probe arrived at the surface at 2,247 hours. Chen made the decision to retrieve it personally. Standard decontamination protocol, full hazmat suit, sealed sample containers. By the book. She had no reason to suspect the protocol wouldn't be enough. The exterior cameras captured what happened in the drill bay. Chen suited up in the adjacent prep room, ran through the safety checklist, and cycled through the airlock into the bay. The probe sat in its cradle, frost forming on its metallic surface. She secured it into a containment cylinder, sealed the lid, and carried it back to the airlock. Initiated the decon sequence. High-intensity UV radiation, chemical wash, 3 full cycles. When the all-clear sounded, she brought the probe into the station proper. But the interior security cameras showed something else, something Chen couldn't see from inside her helmet. As the decon spray misted over the probe's surface, something moved. Not ice, not frost, something microscopic, invisible to human eyes without magnification. The high-resolution security footage caught it for exactly 4 frames before it dispersed into the ventilation system. A thin, dark mist that seemed to move with purpose. Chen removed her helmet in the prep room. She was smiling. She told Rodriguez, who met her at the door, that she felt fine. The probe was ready for analysis. Rodriguez noticed her eyes first. The pupils were dilated, fully, both of them. "Sarah," he said, "you okay?" She turned to look at him, still smiling. "I'm perfect," she said. "We're all going to be perfect soon." Rodriguez took a step back. That's when the screaming started in the med bay. David Park had been conducting a routine physical on one of the geologists, Marcus Webb, when Webb suddenly stood up from the examination table, pupils fully dilated, and walked out of the med bay without a word. Park tried to stop him. Webb didn't respond, didn't even acknowledge Park's presence, just walked with purpose toward the drill bay. Park followed him, increasingly alarmed. He activated his radio. "This is Park. I need someone in Corridor C immediately. We have a situation with Webb." He stopped talking. Webb had entered the drill bay. So had Chen and Yuki, and 4 other crew members whose shifts had ended hours ago. They were all standing in a circle around the borehole, perfectly still, perfectly silent. All of them smiling. All of them staring down into the ice. Park backed away slowly. Then he ran. By the time he reached the observation deck, 12 crew members had entered the drill bay. By 0300 hours, the number was 18. The security footage from the next 24 hours tells a story that none of the survivors wanted to believe. The infected crew members didn't attack. They didn't become violent. They simply changed. They stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped speaking except to say one phrase, "We're going to be perfect." And they waited. Rodriguez and Park barricaded themselves in the observation deck with 13 other uninfected crew members. They had food, water, and communications equipment. They sent a distress signal to Earth, knowing the response would take 52 minutes. Through the deck's windows, they could see the infected standing in the corridors below, watching, waiting. Not hostile, just patient. Communications specialist Yuki, now infected, stood directly outside the observation deck door for 6 hours straight. When Park tried to speak to her through the intercom, she simply smiled and said, "Come down. You'll understand. We're all going to be perfect." The response from Mission Control arrived at 0843 hours. Europa Station, this is Houston. We copy your distress signal. Quarantine protocols are now in effect. Do not, repeat, do not allow any infected personnel to access the communications equipment or escape pods. A rescue mission will be authorized within 48 hours. Hold position. Acknowledge. Rodriguez looked at Park. They both understood what that meant. A rescue mission would take 18 months to reach Europa, and the infected had 48 hours to wait. Marcus Webb, the station's lead engineer, had been in the observation deck when the quarantine started. He'd been studying the probe's telemetry data for hours. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "It's not a biological organism," he said. "Look at the contamination pattern." He pulled up the security footage and highlighted the timestamps. It spread through the ventilation system in under 4 minutes. No biological agent works that fast. And look at this. He pointed to the thermal imaging. No metabolic heat signature, no cellular activity. "Then what is it?" Park asked. "I think—" Webb ran a hand through his hair. "I think it's something that rewrites biology. Like a virus, but more fundamental. It's changing them at a molecular level." Rodriguez felt his blood turn cold. "Can we stop it?" Webb was quiet for a long moment. "We'd need to sterilize the entire station. High heat, high enough to break molecular bonds." "The reactor," Park said quietly. Webb nodded. "If we trigger a manual overload, the temperature spike would hit 4,000 degrees Celsius. Nothing would survive that. Not the infected. Not whatever came up from that cavity." "Not us either," Rodriguez added. "The escape pods are on the other side of the station," Webb said. "If we move fast, some of us could make it." Through the observation deck windows, they could see 31 infected crew members standing in the corridors. All of them watching. All of them waiting. All of them smiling. The plan was desperate, suicidal even. But it was the only option they had. Webb would go to engineering and initiate the reactor overload. The rest would make a run for the escape pods. 3 pods, 5 people each, 15 survivors. The infected wouldn't stop them. That was the strange part. Every simulation they ran, every model they built, suggested the infected would simply let them leave. Because the infected weren't interested in stopping them. They were interested in joining them. At 1400 hours on March 13th, they opened the observation deck door. The infected stood in the corridors, watching, but they didn't move. Chen was there, her eyes still dilated, still smiling. She looked at Rodriguez as he passed. "You'll come back," she said. "They always come back." The survivors ran. Webb split off toward engineering. Rodriguez led the others toward the escape pod bay. Behind them, the infected simply watched. Webb reached the reactor control room at 1423 hours. The infected hadn't followed him. They didn't need to. He disabled every safety system the station had, overrode every failsafe. forced the control rods into a configuration that would cause a catastrophic thermal spike in exactly 30 minutes. Enough time for the others to launch. Not enough time for him to reach them. Webb opened a final transmission to the escape pods. "This is Webb. Reactor overload initiated. You have 28 minutes. Get clear of the blast radius. And when you get home..." He paused. "Tell them to never come back here. Tell them to leave Europa alone." Rodriguez's voice came back, crackling with static. "Marcus, there's still time." "No," Webb said quietly. "There isn't. Go." At 14:47 hours, 3 escape pods launched from Europa Station. Webb watched them on the monitors until they were clear. Then he walked down to the engineering deck and waited. The infected crew members had gathered there, all 31 of them, standing in perfect silence, all of them smiling. Chen was at the front. She looked at Webb. "You could have been perfect," she said. "Yeah," Webb replied, "but I'd rather be human." At 14:53 hours, Europa Research Station Alpha's reactor reached critical mass. The explosion registered 200 degrees Celsius, hot enough to vaporize ice, steel, human tissue, and whatever had been waiting in the darkness below. The 3 escape pods reached Earth orbit 18 months later. 15 survivors, 14 actually. 1 died during the journey, heart failure. Natural causes. They were quarantined for 6 weeks at the orbital facility. Every test came back clean, no contamination, no infection, no trace of whatever had emerged from beneath Europa's ice. Dr. Sarah Chen's name is on the memorial wall at the Johnson Space Administration headquarters, alongside the other 32 casualties. Marcus Webb received a posthumous Medal of Valor. His family was told he died preventing a reactor failure, a hero's death. The official incident report classified the event as catastrophic equipment failure, preventable with proper maintenance protocols, tragic but understandable. Europa Station was designated a permanent quarantine zone. No drilling, no surface missions, no human contact. For 5 years, that designation held. But in 2192, an automated orbital survey detected something unusual. Ice-penetrating radar showed a series of geometric anomalies beneath Europa's surface. Structures, hundreds of them, scattered across the entire moon. As if the cavity Chen's team had found wasn't unique. As if it was just one of many. The data was classified within hours. But the question remained. What else is waiting down there? And what happens when we drill again? If you want to hear more stories from the dark corners of the cosmos, check out the playlist in the description. Subscribe if you dare to explore what lurks beyond the stars. This was The Last Message from Europa Station.